Hi, I'm Ryan with your Neville Museum Minute. Here today with James. How are you doing this morning, James?
Doing well, thanks. It's great to be here.
Yes, it certainly is. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about one of the topics that I think is really fascinating that we've worked with here at the museum, all about bees. So James, what do you know about bees?
What don't I know about bees?
That's what I was going to say.
Quite a bit, actually. I curated our bees exhibit in 2018 here. I worked with the UW Extension and I worked with the Brown County Beekeepers Association to help create this exhibit. So in doing that, I learned quite a few interesting facts. Like, there are like over 200,000 bee species in the world.
Oh, wow.
400 live here in Wisconsin. And that not all of them produce honey or are the same as the honeybee that we see or think about normally. So.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. It's something that I learned in the exhibit. There's only a handful of species that actually produce honey.
Right. And normally a lot of them, what we use are like the European honeybee or the Italian honeybee. Yeah. So those are a lot of what we think about when we think about bees, but people don't think about like the blueberry bee. That's shiny blue in color, carpenter bees, all that kind of stuff. They look a lot different. They're not all yellow and black either. So.
Yeah, and I remember in the exhibit, one of the other things I was kind of surprised about is that only another small handful actually live in hives. A lot of these bees just live independently, solitary lifestyles. They don't really, congregate in these big hives like we normally think of when we think about bees.
Exactly. They can live in the ground, sticks, all that kind of stuff, and they tend to like to live by themselves mostly. So.
Yeah. But let's get real here. What most people want to know about bees is all about the honey production. Yeah. And I know that even going way back to ancient times, even before ancient Egyptians, people have been in the honey game for a long time.
Yeah, they have. And they haven't always used the hives that we use now. Back pre-Egyptian time, they might have just gone out and found honey hives in nature and just like took them.
Hit them with a stick, knocked them off a tree.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I got stung a bunch and just took the honey.
But it was so worth it.
Yeah.
So worth it. Honey's delicious. I might go out and just try and find it if I couldn't.
Yeah, desperate times, man.
Desperate times, I know. But so that happened. But then what they started creating were things like this behind us, which is called a skep. SKEP, I guess. But what it basically is an upside down basket. So they took grasses and wove them together, create an upside-down basket, and then what happens is they allow native bee populations that produce honey to go up inside and create their, basically their hive, and then they produce the honey on the inside.
Yeah, so the bees, they produce wax and honey, so they basically build their infrastructure out of the wax inside of this basket, and then they fill up all the little hexagonal holes with their honey.
Yeah, exactly. And then they also use something called propolis, which they produce inside their body, which they use as the glue to put all their wax in there. But what happens is, if you can imagine what are the problems with this hive is, you can't tell if there's diseases on the inside or pests inside, because if you want to check inside your hive, you have to lift it. And who wants a face full of bees?
No,
I don't want a face full of bees.
Unless you're trying to grow one of those bee beards, but I think that's a little bit different.
Exactly. Dangerous. But righteous, I guess.
Yeah, I'll say.
But so what they'd have to do in order to get the honey on the inside of these skeps is they would have to take it and either somehow remove the bees. They smoked back then too, smoked them out, but not as often. And then the bees would be homeless because they have to crush all that comb on the inside to get it out. They have to basically squish that skep, and then it destroys all the comb on the inside.
So everything falls out, and then you just press the wax and you squeeze the honey out of it.
Yeah.
And there you go.
Yep, and then if there were any bees on the inside, unfortunately, they just didn't make it.
Oh, no.
So you probably had some extra protein in your honey back in those days. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but fortunately today, I think there are some places that are still using the skep method, but a lot more common today is the Langstroth Hive, and that came about in much more recent times.
Yeah, that came around in about 1852, which seems like a long time ago, but it's actually pretty recent. So what that was Reverend Lorenzo Langstroth.
It's a great name, Lorenzo Langstroth.
Yeah, he was a really smart guy. And what he did was he wanted something easier to get into hives and stuff. So he created basically what we see nowadays, which is this Langstroth hive, which uses a hanging frame system. So what that is there's hanging frames on the inside that they can build their comb on and deposit the honey. And then in between,
This up here.
there are gaps called the bee space, which was discovered back in the 1850s. And what they realized is that bees are pretty picky about how much space they have between their combs. It's about 3/8 of an inch. If it's too big, they just fill it in with all that propolis and glue, and then you can't really get into your honey. If it's too small, they can't move around. So they're pretty picky about what they have. So he created that. And then what happens is it makes it really easy because you can lift out your frames. After you smoke them, the bees are pretty chill, and you just kind of brush them off with a bee brush. And then you can extract that honey by putting it in an extractor, which kind of works like a washing machine. So you put all your frames on the inside, and then it spins it really fast, and all that honey gets drawn out of the wax and the comb. And then what happens is you can put the frames back in because it didn't destroy the honey or the comb on the inside, and the bees can just go back to using it.
So, last question for you. If I wanted to learn more about beekeeping, either I want to learn a little bit more about how this process works, or if I even want to get started in it, what are some of the resources that are available here in the Green Bay area and maybe even nationwide?
Yeah, so one of the biggest resources I found with working with the exhibit here locally was the Brown County Beekeeping Association. They're an amazing group to work with. They can tell you anything you need to know to get started. And then if you're not local, there are a lot of other places in the state or the country that have beekeeping associations as well. What I found is there are great resources online and there are books, but talking to people and learning what their experience was like and how they've been doing it, the tips and tricks that you learn from these associations is crazy. It's really awesome. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. Great talking to you again, James, as always.
Thanks for having me. This has been a blast. I'm so glad I'm here.
Yes. Well, great. And if you want to learn more about some of the different artifacts that we have here in the museum, be sure to check out our website, and you can also see all of our other Museum Minute videos on our YouTube page. Yeah. Thanks.